because I couldn't. The the problem with recording the morning is that I oftentimes have people who like their microphones don't work very well, right? So their
Uh,
microphones don't work very well, so it's hard to get them to respond and participate sometimes. Okay, so let's start this off. I think you have this as F. Is that right?
G, the Harlem Renaissance was our last point.
G was the last thing. Okay, so let's go to H.
Well, with the G, we just wrote Harlem Renaissance. We
You
didn't
didn't
talk about the
you
Harlem
didn't do anything.
Renaissance.
All right, let's do Harlem Renaissance real quick.
We just wrote it down.
Where is it? Here's the Harlem Renaissance. Okay, so the Harlem Renaissance. Harlem is in New York City. Okay, so the Harlem Renaissance is after the Great Migration. We have all these African Americans moving out of the South and then moving up into the different cities. Harlem becomes one of the centers of Black culture. Okay, it becomes the center point of Black culture. It's where we get all sorts of Black musicians and artists and poets, authors, right? They're all going to start converging on Harlem, and Harlem is going to become kind of the center of African American culture at this time period. Harlem is also where we're going to get this is where jazz music is going to become popular around the country. This is where blues music is going to become popular. This is where we're going to get a lot of this like fashion and stuff. It's all going to come out of here. Okay. The Cotton Club is the most famous club of this time, and it's in Harlem, and it's a dance club basically, where you'd have like jazz bands like this, playing jazz bands playing and stuff, and people would come and they would dance and stuff. They would drink and have alcohol, even though prohibition is the law at this time. So Harlem is going to become the center of African American culture. In class, we well, let's define our music here. Okay, so these are all some of the singers that are going to be part of the Harlem Renaissance. Um, Louis Armstrong is going to be Louis Armstrong is going to be the most famous one probably. He's going to be the trumpeter. He's going to have a long career over decades. But Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, right? These are all really famous singers. So let's define the two music styles. Okay, jazz. Let's define jazz first. All right. Jazz. Sam, how much do you know about music? Can you define these?
I don't know much about African American and that kind of stuff.
About music?
Yeah, about that,
You
like
don't
terms
take
of
band
music.
or anything?
I'm in percussion and choir.
Okay. So jazz is an American style of music, and specifically an African American style of music uh, that is focuses on and improvisation and syncopation. Improvisation and syncopation. Okay. Um, okay, so it's a form of African American music. It focuses on improvisation and syncopation. Okay, syncopation is a it's a way of breaking up the beat of the music so that on off beats you end up playing different kind of melodies and stuff. What you do is in the course of the song, you create space in the song for other instruments or singers to add stuff into it, right? So for jazz, oftentimes every time you play the song is a little bit different because every member of the band is kind of improvising differently. And what you do is you basically create this space within the music for all the artists to express themselves. Okay. Jazz comes from New Orleans originally. Okay, I'll put that in there, the notes. It comes from New Orleans originally, but it really becomes like nationally popular in New York. Oftentimes, jazz is considered like the first great American like music, the first great American music, and it's the first solely American style of music is jazz. All right. Blues. Let's define blues. All right. So the definition of blues, I'm looking at the definition real quick so I can. All right. So it's African American music. It's an African American music that focuses on emotionality and melancholy. It's a style of African American music that focuses on like emotionality and melancholy, and it uses a 12-bar sequence usually. Okay, so this is where you're creating a rhythm that you end up repeating over and over again with like variations, slight variations through it, right? Blues comes out of the Mississippi Valley. It comes out of Memphis, Tennessee, that area originally. Memphis, Tennessee, again, moves into New York, and this is where it becomes really, really popular. Okay. In class, we listen to some jazz and some blues, but doing it over Zoom doesn't work very well. So there's a bunch of assignments on there with jazz and blues singers and stuff. I encourage you to just do those assignments. You know, that'll be better. It doesn't work very well trying to show you over Zoom. It just doesn't work. All right. So this is going to be the big thing out of the Harlem Renaissance. Let's do we could take a moment with this painting. All right, so Sam, go ahead and unmute your mic. Walk me through what you're thinking about this painting. All right, what stands out about this? This is a called Black Belt by Archibald Motley, and it's a pretty good example of art coming out of the Harlem Renaissance at this time period. Okay, what is this?
So first thing,
Yeah.
First thing that I notice is that it's nighttime.
Okay.
Second thing is the style of the dresses, which gives us a period of time, just like the series or time period that it comes from. We can see the socializing / like the social interactions that occurred during this time with the people. So we have like the romance in the far right of the photo, and then we also have like law instruction with like the police officer in the left.
Okay.
And so we can also see in the background of the photo, we see the different shops of like cigars and cigarettes, the inn and the hotel. And so you can almost kind of conclude that like these people liked the night time, or like they did a lot of stuff in the night.
Okay.
Like my guess is that a lot of the music was sometimes mostly played at like bars or clubs, and so those mostly took time at night.
Right.
And then there's the cars in the background, which tells us a little bit. There's a taxi, and then there's a couple people on bicycles, but for the most part, it's really a photo about like the socializing and like kind of the more like the lives of like the general public in Harlem.
Okay. I think you're good. What is this telling me about Black society?
They're very close as a society. You can see like they're almost like kind of working together.
Right. I think this art stands out. I think everything you said is right. The art stands out, right? Because it's showing a Black thriving society, right? This isn't the African American society that we kind of have in our mind a lot of times where we're thinking of like poor farmers in the South, right? This is not that. This is not former slaves. This is a different society, right? People are dressed nicely. They're out. They're smiling. They got beautiful women on their arms and they're smiling and they're having a good time, right? The police officer is Black and the police officer is part of the society. He's helping. He's not an enemy, right? He's not a threat like oftentimes the police are for Black communities. I think Motley wants to show us like a slice of what it's like to live in a world without segregation and the threat of violence and without that, right? That he's trying to show a slice of this Black community at the time. There's a lot of art at this time that is kind of showing this kind of stuff, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right, let's move to the next one. So you had H was Harlem Renaissance, or what did you have? H? or I?
G as the Harlem Renaissance.
Okay, so let's go to H. Let's go back to pick up the thing we skipped earlier, prohibition. H is prohibition. Okay, so prohibition was the 18th Amendment. The 18th Amendment that prohibited the production, sale, purchase, and transport of alcohol. Prohibited the production, sale, purchase, and transport of alcohol. What's missing from that list?
Consumption.
Yeah. So consuming alcohol was okay. It's kind of ironic, right? Under prohibition, if you were just sitting on the porch of your house drinking and a cop saw you, as long as you just sat there and finished your drink, you're fine, right? You just can't you can't transport it or sell it or buy it. Okay. There's some exceptions to this law. The law had a religious exception for religions that used alcohol, right? Do you know what religions use alcohol?
Catholics.
Yep. So Catholics drink wine with church on Sundays, right? Also Jews drink wine with a lot of their rituals. So they were exempted, right? The law doesn't list the religions that are exempted, so we're going to find a bunch of religions that suddenly start adding alcohol. So they can get that exemption. We're also there's an exemption for religion, and then the next exemption is for medical. Like doctors could prescribe you alcohol as a medicine, and it was oftentimes prescribed as like a painkiller. It's like it was described as a painkiller because people would have like a toothache or something, and then you get prescribed like whiskey, drink your whiskey to help you with the toothache. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one of prohibition is brought about because the United States has a massive alcoholism problem at this time. Massive alcoholism problem. Okay. Men drink a lot, a ton. They drink like 2 or 3 times more than people drink today. Or probably more than that. They drink a lot. And so they were trying to regulate this. Prohibition is basically 100% of failure. It's a total failure, basically a total failure. So what it ends up doing is prohibition ends up increasing alcohol consumption. More people drink, and people are drinking more than they used to. It also increases the price and the cost of alcohol. So people selling alcohol illegally are making even more money than before. Okay. It's also going to cause an explosion in organized crime. This is where we're going to get the rise of like the mafia and stuff. All right, so let's get some vocab words. The first vocab word you need is a speakeasy. Okay, the first vocab word you need is a speakeasy. A speakeasy, which is a secret bar, an illegal secret bar.
Wait, what?
Okay, the word is a speakeasy, right? Speakeasy, and it's an illegal secret bar. So oftentimes what you would do is you'd walk into like a store, right? And it looks like, say, like a 7-Eleven type store, right? You walk into that store, and then when you speak the password to the worker, right? Like you're speaking easy. When you're speaking password to the worker would go back and like open up the secret door, right? And they'd open up like the shelf would open up and it'd be a door, and then you go in the basement and you go drinking, and it's a bar down there. And so you go drink. Yeah. These speakeasies start to show up all over the entire country, all over the place. A lot of them still exist today. A lot of them are like just regular bars and stuff today that you can go visit, and they're like old 1920s style bars, and you like walk through like the secret door and stuff. It's pretty cool. A lot of them are pretty cool. It's pretty fun. So these are these bars. Oftentimes these bars you'd have like a doctor who like prescribed the bartender a bunch of alcohol. He'd be like, "Oh, Sam, you're so sick. I better prescribe you some whiskey. Here's 40 cases of whiskey." Right. And then you would take your prescription to work with you.
That's
Um,
good.
yeah. And uh, the speakeasies also oftentimes were, because they're illegal, they get raided by the cops a lot, right? And so you'd shut it down and like reopen the speakeasy. They would like open up at different places all over the town, right? So you'd have like one open up in this location for 2 weeks, and then it would shut down and open up in another location for a couple of weeks, and then shut down, and they would do that. The other vocab word you need is a bootlegger. A bootlegger. A bootlegger is a person who smuggles alcohol. Now, most of this alcohol, a significant portion of this alcohol, is coming from Canada. It's coming from Canada. Prohibition was big business for Canada, right? Because now America can't make any liquor, and so Canada just starts making it all, right? And Canada is not very far away from our big cities, right? Detroit is right next to Canada. Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, New York, like Philadelphia. They're all relatively close to Canada, right? You can drive from Canada in a day and deliver all the alcohol you want. I like this one. This is a truck that has all the wood in it, so it looks like it's just transporting lumber, but
Mhm.
it's not actually real, right? They have a fake door in the back. You pull it out. When you open it up, you find that it's just filled with alcohol on the inside.
I love how like perfectly stacked all
Yep,
the wood is just like it's like
pretty
that's
cool,
so
huh?
realistic.
I know, it's pretty cool, huh? Yeah, but there's a lot of this kind of stuff, right? Like fake milk trucks and fake lumber trucks and fake, all sorts of fake trucks. And they're all just driving in from Canada, right? Um, okay, so let's underneath there, let's go reasons why prohibition fails. And we're gonna go 1, 2 on here. Reasons why prohibition fails. All right, what do you think is the first big reason why prohibition fails?
Alcohol still being smuggled in.
Well, it fails because people like to drink. As it turns out, people like to drink, and people don't like to be told not to drink, right? By telling Americans that they can't do it, you motivate a whole bunch of Americans to be like, well, I didn't want to drink before, but now I'm going to, right? As it turns out, Americans aren't very good at following the rules. We have a long history of not following the rules. Um, okay, so the first thing is Americans just like to drink. They like to drink and they don't like being told what they can't do, right? The other thing is that alcohol's super, super easy to make. You can make it out of almost anything, and you can almost make it by accident. It's super, super easy to make. Super easy to make. You can make alcohol basically with anything that has like carbohydrates in them, anything with like natural sugars, right? So you can make it out of grain, out of potatoes, out of rice, out of any kind of corn, out of any of that kind of stuff. You can make it out of any kind of fruit, apples or berries or grapes or anything, right? It's super, super easy. And at this point in time, half the country are still farmers. And so they're all growing food anyway. And so basically everyone in the United States knows how to make alcohol, right? So you're trying to regulate something that everyone can just make in their home and basically everyone wants. So it becomes a real problem. All right, the last thing we're going to mention here is organized crime. It's the rise of organized crime.
Is this a new letter?
Yeah, go ahead and make a new letter. Yeah. What's that? J, I,
I.
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 Yeah. Okay. So I stands for organized crime. This is going to be the rise of the mafia families. So a mafia is going to be a crime family, basically. A lot of these mafias are going to rise up, and they're going to rise up in immigrant communities in the big cities, in like New York, Chicago, Detroit, all these big cities. And the stereotype is that it's Italian immigrant families. Italian immigrants are going to be the biggest names here, but there's also, there's also mafias in other ethnic groups as well. I don't want you to think it's just Italians, right? But we're going to get the most famous ones are going to be Italians. Probably the most famous gangster at the time is Al Capone, right here. His nickname was Scarface. He hated that name, but Al Capone, he was a mob boss and a murderer. He basically ran Chicago. He was the guy who basically controlled all of Chicago. Um, he was very violent, very violent. He murdered all sorts of people. The most famous incident was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, on February 14th, 1929, where they did a drive-by and shot a whole bunch of people. This is a very famous incident because it was like out in the open, everyone saw it, and it also killed a bunch of civilians as well. Most of the time when you're dealing with gang violence, gangs don't kill citizens very much, right? Gangs usually kill other gangsters. You're not usually in a lot of danger from a gang unless you're in a gang. Chicago is where the violence starts to spill out into the regular community and starts killing regular people. Have you ever heard who arrested Al Capone?
No.
It was not the police. It was not the FBI. It was the IRS. The IRS. Who's the IRS? Do you know?
International. I don't know.
No. The IRS is the Internal Revenue Service. They're the tax collectors. They couldn't find evidence for his murders, and so they found evidence that he hadn't paid taxes on all of his money, and so they arrested him for not paying taxes. He ended up dying in prison. He ends up throw him in jail for the rest of his life. He has a heart attack in jail and dies. Anyway, so this organized crime becomes a huge problem all through the 20s and the 30s, the 20s and 30s and 40s. It kind of dies down after World War II. It dies down after World War II, but the 20s and 30s, the crime is really, really bad, which is one of the reasons why they're going to kill Prohibition in the 30s, and this is one of the reasons why. Cool. I think we're pretty much good to stop here. I think we're pretty much good. You're tied with the morning class. The morning class had like 4 people in it, so maybe I should have recorded that. Oh well.
Honestly,
Oh well. It's okay. It's okay.
yeah.
People can watch your video and they can just be fans of you, Sam. All right. I'm stopping the recording now.